I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, the head coach for JobSearchCoachingHQ.com. And if you are here, welcome. And I'm going to try and do a weekly YouTube live to answer questions I received during the week about job search. If you'd like to send a question to me, I'll mention this a couple of times during the show. There are two ways you can do it. For now, I'm going to switch over to a third, but for now, the two ways that you can do it are, number one, message me through LinkedIn, linkedin.com/IN/the Big Game Hunter. And you have to connect with me first, and in doing so, mention that you want to ask a question for the YouTube Live, Ask the Big Game Hunter about job search, and I'll accept the connection request and answer your question on the show. I also want to mention that you can email me at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. In the subject line, put the phrase, "I have a question for you." So this way I know you're not a spammer, because that account seems to get way too much in the way of spam. So it's Sunday morning, 9 a.m. as I'm starting. Had a lovely dinner last night at a local restaurant called Ganshan Station. It's an Asian restaurant, and they were doing a pop-up last night of this odd combination, at least it was odd to me, of Polish and Korean recipe, of Polish and Korean food from a restaurant in Chicago called Kimski. Kimski, like kimchi with a ski at the end of it. As odd sounding as it was fabulous. Clearly overrated. I'm feeling a little sluggish today, so I apologize in advance. I'm sure somewhere in the show I'll kick into high gear and would love to answer your questions. So if you have a question and you're watching live, just leave a message in the chat. I'll try and get to it today, okay? Also want to mention, follow my YouTube channel, and the easiest way to get to it is if you go to jobsearchtv.com, and there's a place that you can subscribe. If you watch some of my other videos and you decide that you want to subscribe at that point, that's cool. I understand, you're not sure if I'm worthwhile or not, but if you get to it in that way, let's see if I can do this. Go to the lower corner there. There's a little icon on those videos, and just click on that, and you'll be able to subscribe to my channel. Again, jobsearchtv.com. I've got several thousand videos about job search that you can watch or listen to, because my podcasts are there as well, that will help you find work. But if you have a question and you can wait until I record a YouTube Live, great. If you want an immediate response, because there's a degree of urgency, there are two ways to reach out to me. One is through an app called Magnify, Magnifi. That's iOS only. Or you can reach out to me through prestoexperts.com. Whichever way you do it, I'd rather you schedule time with me than just pop in out of the blue. So you can message me through Magnify to schedule the time, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn to schedule the time. And the reason I say that is I coach people. I'm not a performer. I coach people, and I don't want to interrupt my session with someone in order to take your call or respond to your video on Magnify. Okay, so let me start off with the first question today. And get over to that doc. There we go. When an interviewer offers you a beverage at the beginning of an interview, should you accept their offer? So my first thought is, why wouldn't you accept the offer if you wanted a beverage? Now, if you think you might have to interrupt the interview to use a restroom, no. If you're already pretty hydrated, don't. Or if you want to, but just have a sip or two of something, by all means, that's the easiest way to do it. But there's no reason not to accept the beverage at the beginning of the interview. They feel as though they've done something nice. They've been kind to you. On your side, if you're thirsty or you need some caffeine in your system, you can accept the drink and know that that's going to help you. But the thing I always remind people is, Your job is to sell them on wanting to hire you. It is not designed to be nice. Nice is a byproduct of wanting to connect with someone. Your job is to win the interview so that they want to hire you. So as long as you can keep that focus, it's okay. If you don't think you can keep the focus by accepting the drink, don't do it. Okay? So that's my first question. Here's the second one. Why do some HR recruiters just vanish without any response after a face-to-face interview? Well, that's easy. The reason for it is simple. Number one is they may not have anything to tell you. Number two is they don't feel like getting into an argument with you over whether or not you actually were qualified or not. So I'm working with the assumption that this is not just simply you spoke to HR or you met with HR and they rejected you. You may have met with a hiring manager. They may not have heard anything yet. They may not have, they may have gotten a response, or they're just busy. Remember, they're just not there to deal with you. They've got hiring managers who are their clients who they need to respond to. They are interviewing other people. They don't have a lot of time. So yes, they can send an email. And I know when I used to do recruiting, often the way I would send a rejection to someone was I had a signature file created that had the name of the firm in the subject line, and then the body of the resume of the email might say something along the lines of, one of the hardest things I have to do as a recruiter is to let someone know that they have been rejected for a position that they've interviewed with. New paragraph. Unfortunately, that is the case with you at this time. I will keep an eye out for other positions, but in the meantime, this opportunity has come to an end. Yes, they could send that kind of note out, but the truth is, for most people, they want to actually have the conversation. Where was I deficient? What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? They don't have time for that. Often people will respond, and I would have this happen all the time, but they didn't ask me anything about that. A previous answer may have been the setup for the follow-up that caused them to not bother asking the follow-up that was specific to that. You may have already indicated through your initial answer that you had a deficiency that they chose not to explore. So understand that from their standpoint, they're trying to be time efficient. And often communicating with job hunters is not really efficient. So that's question number two. Number three, what types of questions do you hope a candidate interviewing at your company asks when you're interviewing them? I want to talk about the ones that you don't ask. At the initial interview, you don't ask about benefits. You really cover that at the time of the offer or when you're coming up on the offer. So, for example, let me just explain why I say that. Some people have 4 weeks vacation. They join a new organization that's only 2. Can you negotiate the additional vacation? Some people are not paying for insurance coverage. The next firm will. Can you negotiate the differential here so that you're not paying for things out of pocket? That's really when you cover benefits. My favorite questions that I encourage people to ask are not really about the job, except for clarifying questions about it, because my hope is you would have asked it at the very beginning of the interview. That's one of the things I coach people about, is how to ask at the beginning of the interview so you can talk about what you've done that matters to them instead of just talking about what you've done. What I encourage people to do is to ask questions along the lines of, let's say you hire me and I come on board. What would you want me to accomplish during the first 30, 60, or 90 days after joining? That becomes one question. Another question might be, let's say you hire me and it's a year from now and time to give me my first review. And I haven't just done a good job. I've done a spectacular job, far better than you might have imagined. What would I have accomplished during that year that would make you think that? And what that does is signal, number one, is that you want to do great work. Number two is based upon what you hear. You may discover that your future boss, and I put that in air quotes, your future boss is a bit of a lunatic with their expectations. You don't want to step into a situation where you're doomed to failure from day one. You want to know what their thinking is so you can make sure that you hit those points or never got involved. Okay. Next question. How do you answer an interview question? Prove that you're a senior level. Now, I talk to a lot of people, and when I did recruiting, and a firm would say to me, we're looking for a senior for this role. Senior what? Becomes the next question. Number two is define for me what you think a senior is. And that's really the question I would ask as a follow-up. Because otherwise, you're like a monkey with them being the organ grinder. If you know that metaphor, you have to keep jumping and dancing to prove that you're something with no knowledge as to what they're really looking for. So rather than just simply answer the question instantly, what I want you to do is to say, what's your definition of a senior? And once you've heard that, you can say, I'm not a senior, I'm an intermediate, or I'm very close to being that. Or you can say, let me show you how my experience matches up with what your definition of a senior is. But you can't go on, allow yourself to be defensive. You have to make them explain what it is they want to hear. And if they say, well, it's a senior, well, you respond by saying, different organizations define senior differently. You have one definition, my firm has another. I just interviewed with so-and-so, they've got a different definition. What's your definition of a senior? And that way I can speak to that. Okay. Next question. Why do jobs require so much professionalism when applying for them, but they don't give you anything back? They set up an interview and then don't see you and hire someone else. Where is the respect for us? There is no respect for you. You're an external individual who they are evaluating and assessing for a particular role. I must, in all honesty, tell you, as I said, I have another show called Job Search Radio, and it's a podcast that comes out daily now. And on the first show I did for Job Search Radio, it was an interview show, and I probably did about 150 to 200 interviews. And on the first show, I asked my guest, it's Monday morning, I walk in, there are at least 200 resumes waiting for me. How many do you think might be vaguely qualified? And my answer was 2. 2 out of 200. Most of what I would receive is spam, and I'm sure that that's true of other people as well. When you talk about professionalism, don't be a spammer. If you're not getting a response back from a resume that you've submitted, it probably doesn't indicate that you're qualified for the job, and you don't deserve a response except an autoresponder that says, number one, thanks for uploading or submitting your resume. We'll be back in touch with you if we're interested. And thus, if they're not interested, they're not in contact with you. You don't deserve more. That's the reality to it. They expect professionalism because it's a manifestation of your behavior once you're on board. But if you don't act in a professional way, like just flipping a resume across the transom like it's a burger at a fast food restaurant, hoping that someone is going to respond to it, well, you don't deserve more. You don't deserve more. So that's why you're not hearing back. And the reason that you're not feeling respect is you haven't been respectful of them. Okay, what are the best ways to respond to a recruiter telling you that you are overqualified for a position? Love the question. Here's the answer. Ready? How so? In what way am I overqualified? Well, they're looking for someone with 2 years of experience. You have 9. Now, often the overqualified term is a euphemism for my client won't pay you enough. You're making more than the client is willing to pay. But sometimes it's that they've referred someone previously. The classic scenario is the manager applying for a staff level position. The manager always claims that they can do the job. They've done it before. And in parentheses, or air quotes, I would say, but they haven't done it in 5 years. They have forgotten more than they care to admit to themselves. And thus, although they can do the job, they are overqualified for the job because they are now a manager of people or director of people rather than a doer or a manager. So, sometimes the response, the question to follow up with is, in what way? How so? Something along those lines that makes them explain to you what it is that was at issue. It's like the flip of the question of the comment about they thought you were too late. In what way? In what way was I too late? And making them explain it to you. Okay? How do I find a job through LinkedIn? Are there any things I need to know about? Yes. So the obvious thing to think in terms of it with LinkedIn is, number one, it could be used like a job board. That is, jobs are posted on LinkedIn and you can apply to them. Number two is LinkedIn is a place where you can be a magnet. You can be a magnet to people, recruiters, organizations that are trying to hire people like you. You can be a magnet through your LinkedIn profile if you think of it like a resume on a job board. That is, it is keyword rich. And you want to attract people to you. It's kind of like LinkedIn has become everyone's CRM and or database, and you want to come up in searches for those who have LinkedIn accounts. So if someone's trying to hire, and let's say they have a LinkedIn recruiter account where they can search all the people on LinkedIn to try and fill a position, how do they do that? Well, they first narrow by geography. And it's not just simply, okay, we're looking for someone in the U.S. We're looking for someone in the U.S. who's within a certain metropolitan area, who has these particular skills, which is as defined by keywords. Then from there, it could be narrowed down by numbers of years of experience within a range, or by a title, which could be, let's say, developer or manager or director, or they've got a data dictionary of titles. It's why I always tell people, when you enter your title on LinkedIn, use a title that matches the LinkedIn data dictionary. If you put in a title that's unique to your organization or unique to the specific role, it's not in the data dictionary. People narrowing down by the title aren't going to find you. So you want to draw people to you. You want to use groups to develop a brand for yourself, the same way you do in writing blog articles for LinkedIn. So remember, part of what you want to do is to build reputation. And part of building reputation is for people to know about you. You may think you're known by a lot of people, but your universe is 20. 30, 40. There are hundreds of millions of people on LinkedIn. A lot of them, almost all of them, don't know you. How you get known is about creating a brand and reputation for yourself. Thus, the way you find you can get a job through LinkedIn for today is through your profile and drawing people to you, by answering job ads. Over the course of the career, it's by developing a reputation and a brand so that people reach out to you, plus the first two things I've mentioned. Next question. How competitive is the hiring process at fill in the blank name of the firm? Well, every organization is competitive with their hiring. If you think you're the only person who's applying to these jobs, you are very mistaken. Lots of people are applying, as I can attest to, and I mentioned earlier with my job search radio interview. 200 some odd resumes, maybe 2 would be vaguely qualified for a role. So remember, every organization's process is competitive just to get in the door. Then it becomes competitive just to get brought back for the second interview. If you're not getting phone interviews based upon your resume stinks, your LinkedIn profile does something to counter what you've written in the resume, or you've applied for a job that you're not qualified for. If you're getting to the screener, the HR person, the recruiter who's screening, and you're not getting any further, you're not making the fit obvious to them. If you're getting to the next round, let's say it's with the staff level individuals who are there to verify that you're qualified, and you're not being brought to their boss, there's a skills deficiency, or you're not explaining yourself well to them for them to feel as though you can do the job. If you're getting to the hiring manager after those folks and you're not getting offers or getting invited back to meet their boss, they don't trust you. And I say it that way because part of what a manager is looking for is worry-free employees. And there's something that you said or did there that gave them cause for pause. Same thing if you meet their boss. So every organization is competitive when they're interviewing. Never delude yourself into believing that it's one interview and everyone falls in love and you're getting a job. You are competing until you get the written offer in hand. Have you ever rejected a candidate in an HR round after they've cleared all their technical interviews? And I know my clients have done that many times. And the reason that they've done it, by the way, I'm just going to check on that text I received. So my wife is traveling. That's just Apple's screen time thing. Have you ever rejected a candidate? Yes. My clients certainly have. Now, they've done it for a couple of reasons. One, the money that they asked for was outside of the budget. Second reason, they said or did something weird in the course of the HR interview, or the hiring manager had cause for pause, or in the course of the interviewing, they found someone who they thought was better based upon a number of different conditions, but better overall. So yes, it happens all the time. HR is never a formality. They're an integral part of the process, and they are there, just like the hiring manager, to evaluate and assess people. Differently than the hiring manager, but they evaluate and assess people too. You can be and may be rejected. It's really that simple. Last question for today, unless I'm seeing something. Let me just take a quick look to see. Okay. Last question for today. These were all messaged to me previously. How often do hiring managers reach back to potential job applicants for new roles within a company? Okay. Unless the company is small, hiring managers are not going to have new openings that you'd be qualified for, unless a lot of time has gone by, or unless they decided a few months after the person that they did hire joined, that they couldn't deliver on what was required. What happens in mid-sized firms, at large firms, is that hiring managers filled their slot. They're not going to contact you about a position in another part of the firm. And frankly, HR is too busy to. So the likelihood is extremely small that you'll ever hear back from the firm unless someone runs a database search, finds your resume there, and reaches out to you. That tends to be an HR function, not a hiring manager function. So the likelihood, next to non-existent. So I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I hope you found this helpful. Visit my website, which is thebiggamehunter.us. I've got thousands of posts there that you can watch, listen to, or read to help you find work more quickly. Here's a couple of other things. Number one is I have the number 1 and number 2 podcasts in Apple Podcasts around job search. I'll tell you, subscribe to No BS Job Search Advice Radio. It's a daily show, short episodes generally, that are all designed to give you bite-sized morsels to help you find work more quickly. JobSearchTV.com. It takes you to my YouTube channel. As I said before, thousands of different posts categorized by playlists that you can cherry pick answers to that will help you. Lastly, if you want curated information, join my website, jobsearchcoachinghq.com. There, I have things narrowed down. And what I always encourage people to do is to take a lifetime subscription there. The lifetime subscription is $299 currently. And what I do is if you purchase that, I'll give you an hour of coaching time for free. I charge $299 per hour or 2 half hours. So it's a great way to get more information curated for you so that you don't make mistakes in your search and that you're well prepared. So I expect I'll be back next week with more. Hope you have a great day and take care.